Good morning. I'm going to continue with my series on the Olympiad from Budapest in 2024. Gukesh, the last game we saw, Gukesh won against macth. After that, he had a draw with Nordibek Satorov. And now, in what probably might be the deciding match, India face America. And Gukesh has the white pieces, and with the black pieces is Fabiano Caruana. So, let's see. D4, knight f6, c4, very normal stuff. E6, yeah. Maybe he wants to play the Nimzo Indian. If Gukesh brings his knight out, he can play the Nimzo Indian. Gukesh doesn't bring his knight out, he goes to the Catalan opening. Yeah. And white isn't bothered about winning that pawn back. If black takes the pawn, white knows he will win it. He can win it immediately with queen here, queen to a4 check, forking the pawn. So he isn't bothered about that. He's willing to let him take it. He has no rush. So the knight comes to attack this pawn, and the knight defends it. And the rook comes to b8. Now, the idea now is that if he takes and Caruana tries to attack the pawn, then b5, which is defended by the rook, pawn b5, which is defended by the rook, can defend the pawn. So no, he can't just ignore the fact that the pawn can be taken. So he takes himself. And Caruana plays the check first. Knight comes to c3 and he takes with the pawn. Why they're calling this the Black Knights Tango, I don't know. The Knights haven't tangoed. But yeah, the Knight would be in this position if you're playing a Black Knights Tango to eventually be coming here and here, the so-called Tango. So yeah, I understand. Bishop comes to g5, good development. h6, he can't back up here because the bishop will get trapped by the pawn. And if he just retreats the bishop, he loses a tempo anyway. So he takes the knight, gives up his two bishops, and takes with the queen. Gukesh castles so that he's threatening to play knight takes pawn on d5. So Caruana takes the knight, and neither of them have got the bishop pair anymore. And then he castles, and the knight begins the job of rearranging. He's looking to play e4 at some point in time. And the knight comes to e7. Again, black is rearranging. No, that is the knight's tango that we talked about. But he plays e3 first. I'm not quite sure why not directly to d4. e4, I think it works anyway. But he develops the queen first to attack the pawn on a7, which moves to a6. And then he plays the queen. Fair enough. You know, I'm not going to argue with the world champion about these subtle nuances of when you should play to e4. He certainly knows what he's doing here. Excuse me. Oh, terrible throat infection. Really struggling to breathe, struggling to talk, a lot of coughing. Anyway, pawn comes to c5. He's not going to tolerate white having that big centre. The queen comes to a3 to attack the pawn on c5. It's then defended, and the rook comes to b1 to attack the pawn on b6. The rook takes a good file, and the pawn is swapped, but instead of taking back straight away, Caruana plays d4. I think that's a fine move, a fine little interposition to play this first. But of course it allows Gukesh to create a passed pawn. c4. So he has to take that, otherwise the c pawn is passed. And, yeah, if he takes, when he takes with the rook, then the c pawn is passed. But he attacks the queen, he attacks the knight first. Rook defends the knight, and then he takes the pawn. The queen is chased away, and the bishop is attacked. Does a swap first. Queen comes to e2 to attack the bishop, and he takes the bishop. The knight is taken, and he says check. Takes it, and now he takes, and he's pawn up, Gukesh. 5 against 4. And he has 2 passed pawns. The e pawn and the c pawn are both passed. King comes to g8 to be out of the range of this check with the rook. The rook comes there anyway. Now he's threatening and pinning the knight. He's threatening also to come here and attack the pinned piece. He plays a check and he retreats. Pawn comes forward and the bishop comes to h3. He might be thinking that he can play a bishop here, chase the rook away from the knight and win the knight. Pawn comes to d2 and the bishop comes to g4. Excuse me. To cover the queen in square. Queen comes to d3, attacks both these pawns and supports the pawn queening. King comes to g2 and the queen takes a pawn, so now they're back to 4 pawns each, and they both got 1 passed pawn. Caruana goes after the e pawn, supports the rook. Queen comes to g6. I think it's a terrible move. He should have played to f6, and then he would have had an attack on the e pawn. But queen g6 is a really poor move, and it hands a winning advantage to Gukesh, and he takes advantage of it really well. Supports the bishop. Of course, the idea with playing the queen was to attack the bishop, but he supports it. The rook is attacked, but then he chases the queen away, and now he gets the pawn, and now he's got 4 pawns against 3. Again, he's a pawn up. Yeah, he hasn't threatened bishop here yet because the queen is covering it. So he threatens the knight. Now he's trying to take the knight and then play bishop here. So he plays h5, and the bishop escapes and keeps the pressure on the knight. The rook comes to b6, so that if he takes the knight, the rook can take the bishop. The bishop comes to f6, f7, even where it's supported by the rook, and attacks the queen. Yeah, he's only got one way to keep defending the knight, and that's it. So they swap off, and he picks up another pawn, and now he's playing 4 pawns against 2. It is an easy win, but still some technicalities need to be addressed properly. Bishop comes to e2, great square, covers, threatens this pawn, and yeah, it's just really well placed to look at both sides of the board. So pawn comes forward to a5, and the bishop takes up the b5 square, where it threatens the knight and where it's supported by the pawn. It also cuts this bishop off from further supports. The knight comes to e5, and the rook threatens the knight. Yeah, he defends it with the rook, and the king comes to a more centralised position, and he resigns there. It's just a matter of time before Caruana manages to get in with king here to threaten the knight, and yeah, this pawn is going to drop, yeah, there isn't much hope for Caruana here, and he resigned. Yeah, it all revolved around the Queen G6 move. Yeah, which seemed fairly reasonable. It's just that it gave him a chance to swap off and leave him with a weakened position and leave him 2 pawns down. He obviously can't defend that position. So yeah, more than any other, this game can be attributed to any other of the games that the Olympiad has. This game can be attributed to a mistake by his opponent, but you know, it happens. You know, you make mistakes, people make mistakes against you. You have to learn to deal with them. Yeah. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment on my videos. Thanks. Bye.